Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid, we read your email aloud, and then we dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones, and I'm here with my co-host, Deboki Chakravarti.
Hello. So, last time we talked about dandelion rubber and we talked about the fentanyl vaccine. And I learned a lot about both of these because I didn't really know that much about either of them. So it was a great episode.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for writing in. And a reminder to all of you listeners that if you have a story you'd like for us to cover on Tiny Show and Tell Us, all you have to do is email us at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form linked in the episode description.
Cool. Deboki, I am going to go first. So my Tiny Show and Tell Us is from listener Kelly, who wrote in saying, corvids and magpies use anti-bird spikes in their nests. Wow. Would love to hear what your research brings up. Thank you for your work on the show. You're welcome. So anti-bird spikes. You've probably seen them. Oftentimes they're along the rooftops of buildings. So they're these like long sort of strips, and then they have these like spikes. I mean, I know I'm reusing the word that is in it, but that's really what they are. They're like these rods, these spikes that are poking out of them. The idea is to keep birds from resting on them.
I mean, on the one hand, I get it. Birds are pooping everywhere. Yeah. They're doing their thing. But it's also like, maybe we should just let the birds be.
Just let them poop. So before we talk about these anti-bird spikes being used in bird nests, let's talk about corvids. So this is, crows is the number one species I think of when I think of corvids, but also magpies, jays. They are known for being very smart. In this case, they're also being smart because they're sort of like co-opting these spikes. Yeah. They're taking them off of buildings. Something that you found in your research, Deboki, was that one magpie nest in Belgium had 165 feet of strips with at least 1,500 spikes. Another just sort of a little side note about corvids, specifically crows, being very smart. I remember when I was in San Diego, the seagulls are nuts there. They really are.
Yeah.
And I had my food was like on a table. I was near it, and the seagull came down and like grabbed a sandwich I had that was in a little baggie, picked it up off the table and flew away with it, but then like dropped it on the ground. It was, like 50 feet away, but I could see, or 20 feet away, but I was not going to go after the seagull. So I see the seagull like trying to get at it, trying to pick at it. It's just mushing this sandwich into oblivion. And then all of a sudden this crow shows up. The seagull is like, all right, I'm out of here. And the crow sort of pulls it in a way that kind of open it up and flies away with it. And you can just tell it's like the crow's going to get the sandwich. The crow is it was just, there was no competition there. It was done.
We should have known when we created anti-bird spikes that the crows were going to figure this out. They were going to.
Right.
They were going to turn it against us.
Yes, totally. A biologist who was interviewed by The Guardian said, quote, even for me as a nest researcher, these are the craziest bird nests I've ever seen. And if you see these photos, so we're going to obviously, as always, we have links to all of the sources that we've used. And so you can go and look, and they do look wild. The two species that have been found to do this are crows and magpies, but they use the spikes differently, which I thought was fascinating. So magpies will have the pointy ends facing out, so you could imagine that's a form of protection, whereas crows will have the pointy sides facing in, which could maybe be for structural support. And so I was thinking, why would they differ this way? Maybe it's because they're so different size-wise. Crows are bigger and stronger. I think it was something like double the size of a magpie. And so maybe like for them, that protection just isn't as essential. Other man-made materials that end up in nests include plastic bags, fishing lines, cigarette butts. I'd rather spikes.
Of course.
Based on the photos I saw, it would take me a second to try and figure out what was even like why the nest looked the way that it did.
I don't know if we can adequately paint a picture here, but it's like they kind of just look like lines. I don't know how else to describe these nests, but they just look like lines everywhere because there's a lot of spikes and there's branches and stuff, I guess, in them too. But it looks like a screensaver or something to me.
Right. And so Researchers, I guess, were tipped off to these nests when they saw nests in the Netherlands and Belgium that were almost entirely made up of anti-bird spikes.
Yeah.
Listener Kelly shared a couple of links, but also one of them included a link to a cockatoo pulling up anti-bird spikes from a building in Australia. So this bird really wanted to poop on the building. No, I'm just kidding. But cockatoos,
Yeah.
so cockatoos, they're parrots.
Yeah.
They're so smart. Like they're the
Yeah.
ones that I think of. If I think of birds that are smart, I think of corvids, like crows.
Right.
But above that, I think of parrots,
Right.
specifically
Yeah.
cockatoos. Like they are incredible problem solvers. I've seen videos of them solving puzzles, using their beaks and their feet to flip open trash bins. Like they can pick up on human language. They can move to a beat. They have rhythm. It's pretty amazing. So
Right. Yeah. I just don't think we should be provoking birds.
no,
That's what I think the lesson of the anti-bird spikes
I'm a
is.
little bit terrified of birds. Like I respect them, but I'm a little terrified.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but I was held hostage by a peacock once and like really.
A male one with all the
Yeah,
feathers?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was, so like if anyone who's lived in Southern California near Arcadia, you've experienced peacocks that just like end up in the suburbs. They're part of the Huntington Gardens, but they'll just like kind of wander around. And so when I was in college, in Pasadena, we would sometimes have peacocks that would just like be walking around. And then one day I was going to someone's house and I was driving the car. I get there and I park on the side of the road and this peacock starts circling the car and whenever it got to the car door, like where I was at, it would look at me and like start poking at the car door.
Oh my
And then it
gosh.
just kept circling around and circling around. It's like, I'm not getting out. Like until this peacock clears out, like I am just stuck here.
No, I would have been.
wanna...
I would have been terrified. Yeah. I would have been like, well, I guess I'm gonna live the rest of my days in this car.
Yep. Yeah. This is my home now. Luckily, I did eventually make it out. I think the peacock just got bored eventually and just like ran off and flew into a tree, which was also pretty spectacular to see. But I was very relieved to not be held hostage.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you made it out alive.
Thank you. These are my trials.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Sam, I have a message from listener Karen who asks, whatever happened to Mitochondrial Eve that I remember hearing about in school? Which is also a great question. I too wondered about this.
Okay, can I just say I had never heard of this. I had to look
awesome.
this up. I had no idea, so I'm so excited because this
Perfect.
the public school system that I went to never brought it up.
I don't think I heard about it in school. And I think like
Okay.
the news about it like came out more recently. Like a lot of the articles that I read about it were while we were in grad school. So I feel like it kind of would track to me that we might not have heard about it a lot growing up. But I also think it's a really interesting thing to talk about because I think the idea of it is a little bit subtle and still kind of hard for me to fully grasp, even though I like understand it. It's still kind of weird. So when you hear the mitochondrial Eve, there's two words that are going to be really important: mitochondrial and Eve. We're going to start with Eve. So when I hear Eve, what I hear is like, oh, this is probably like the first female of the species, right? Like we've got Adam and Eve. Eve was like the first woman in the I don't know if she was like actually, I don't know. I don't know my biblical stuff.
Me either.
I
I'm not
think
the
there
one
was
to ask, but
Yeah. Like I think Adam had another wife first, but most of my Bible knowledge comes from Lucifer. So like the TV show. So don't ask me. Sorry, I apologize.
well, I was going to say all of my biblical knowledge comes from like Disney movies, but that's fine.
Yeah. I've got to step up on that.
Yeah.
Anyways, the point is that Eve, many of us are probably going to assume, oh, that means that's the first female of the species. But that is actually not what's going on. So the mitochondrial Eve is an example of what's called the most recent common ancestor, or MRCA. I'm going to say Merca. I don't know. I'm not going to say the word that much. So I think it would be cool if it was called Merca.
Merca to me sounds like
It's a
you're
little
saying
Merca.
a Merca.
Yeah. Never mind. So maybe we won't do that. But basically, what the most recent common ancestor is supposed to mean is the person whose genome got passed down to like most people today. So importantly, a species can be around for a while, but the mitochondrial Eve can be someone who like came along later. And then just thanks to whatever random chance, she became the mitochondrial Eve. And the mitochondrial part is important. And it's the product of two very key facts that people might be familiar with. One is that mitochondria, like going back way back in evolutionary history, were actually an organism of their own, and they got endosymbiosis. So basically they got consumed by another organism, but instead of getting fully eaten and digested, they got co-opted and they became an organelle. What that means is that they actually have their own genome.
They became the powerhouse of the cell, Deboki.
They sure did. Yeah.
And so much more, as you're about to share with us.
No, but I like the idea that the first mitochondria was like, ooh, I'm going to become the powerhouse here. I bet whatever organism got the mitochondria, do you think they were just like, ooh, I got some ATP now?
Yeah.
Anyway, so what's important in the context of the mitochondrial Eve is that mothers will actually pass their mitochondrial DNA onto their kids. So both daughters and sons, but it means that through a female lineage, you will get like a lineage of mitochondrial DNA that's just getting constantly passed down. And that's really cool because you can kind of go back in time and figure out ancestry by looking at that mitochondrial DNA.
Right.
So basically, you can use these sequences of mitochondrial genomes today even and like use that to figure out ancient lineages. So what might have happened in terms of what could have made someone a mitochondrial Eve is that might be someone who, say, had a lot of daughters, and for whatever reason, that's the genome that took. And so like that's why that's become the mitochondrial mother. We don't know. Like there's a lot of potential reasons.
Right.
There's another interesting aspect to this that I didn't realize until I started looking into it for this episode, but there's actually a male equivalent to the mitochondrial Eve, and he's called the Y chromosomal Adam.
Does not roll off the tongue.
Does not.
The same way. No.
But it is still really interesting.
Yeah.
So again, because it's always going to be the female mitochondria that gets passed down, so you can't trace their mitochondrial lineage in the same way. You can use them to like trace their own like maternal lineage, but they're going to be the end of that line. But the thing that you can study in them is the passage of their Y chromosomes. And that was really interesting to me because the important thing is when you are in the process of being made as a person, your other DNA is like getting shuffled around and stuff. What's important about the mitochondrial genome and apparently also the Y chromosomal one is they're not getting shuffled around in the same way.
Right.
So you can look back on these lineages and learn like what their genomes would have looked like a long time ago. And that's been really important because one of the things that people have wondered about is whether or not the Y chromosomal Adam and the mitochondrial Eve would have existed at the same time. So in 2013, researchers were able to find evidence based on current Y chromosomal sequences and mitochondrial sequences to figure out that the Adam would have lived around 120,000 to 156,000 years ago, and the mitochondrial Eve would likely have lived around 99,000 to 148,000 years ago.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, there's a chance. They could have been around and they might have met each other.
What a meet cute.
That would be a really funny rom-com.
Oh, wait, someone needs to make that.
The other important thing that I didn't realize until I started looking into this is that other animals can have mitochondrial Eves too.
I guess that's logical. We're not the only ones on the planet, even though we seem to act like it.
Right. And so I found this article in Smithsonian Magazine about a sperm whale mitochondrial Eve, which scientists like trace back to like a whale that would have been around 10,000 to 80,000 years ago. For context, the fossil record of sperm whales tells us that they went back millions of years ago. So again, this is a case where the species was around for a while, but then somehow there was a female sperm whale whose mitochondrial genome like just kind of took over.
Had a lot of girls.
Yeah. So one theory is like female sperm whales don't move around a lot. So one guess is like maybe there was a particularly mobile one and she had a lot of daughters and like maybe they just spread all over the place and that's what happened. But we don't know. I just thought it was really interesting like how that shows the ways that we could learn about or like make more educated guesses about what past members of our species would have looked like and other species too.
So cool. Well, thank you, Deboki. I mean, I guess I should thank listener Karen, but also thank you, Deboki, for really diving into the research. Someone has to make that movie. I would love a Hallmark style holiday movie, but with Y chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial Eve.
Yep.
And that is how I would learn about that part of the Bible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So many layers of our ignorance we have now resolved.
Yeah. No, so we just need someone to do that for us. So
one day when we decide to go absolutely crazy for this podcast, we will write this.
Yeah.
And it will be our bonkers episode.
we just lose all of our listeners instantly.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want to hear us write a rom-com podcast episode, let us know and I will make Sam make it happen.
Oh, yeah. I never say never.
Well, thank you to Kelly and Karen for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus series from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that is linked in the episode description. We'll see you next time.